It's not by chance that you're viewing this video. There's a reason you're here. Everything is unfolding exactly as it should. Trust the timing of your life and know that you're being led to where you're meant to be. As you stumble on this video, perhaps not by chance, it will serve to awaken your spirit. This moment has been divinely orchestrated by heaven, not to bring your attention to what you have lost or the trials you have endured, but to gently and powerfully remind you of how deeply pleased the Most High is with the posture of your heart, the strength of your endurance, and the sincerity of your obedience. For all the times you've questioned whether your sacrifices held any weight, for every storm you've walked through without applause, every act of kindness you've offered without recognition, and every step of faith you've taken while feeling unseen, know now that none of it went unnoticed. Here's the profound truth. Heaven has been watching you all along. In this very moment, a divine reward is being orchestrated and formed around your name, not because of what was publicly celebrated, but because of something most people completely overlooked, something sacred, hidden, and undeniably divine. Now, let's go deeper. 7 powerful revelations are about to unfold and confirm precisely why heaven is smiling upon you in this season. But before we proceed any further, Chosen One, take a moment to like, share, and subscribe. Because this isn't just another video, this is a divine confirmation. It is heaven's intentional way of letting you know that you have been seen, you have been tested, and you are now on the brink of being greatly rewarded. If your spirit is already resonating with the message being delivered, I encourage you to type the number 77 in the comments right now. Understand that this number is far from random. It carries deep spiritual significance. It is a prophetic code, a symbolic expression, a sacred sign to the Most High that you are in alignment with divine timing, that you have been spiritually awakened, and that you are now fully ready to receive the blessings, revelations, and rewards that have been preserved and stored up for you since the foundation of your journey. This message is not meant for everyone. It is not common, nor is it casual. It is divinely crafted for the truly chosen, those whose spirits are attuned to higher realms and whose hearts can discern the sacred weight of what is being spoken. Only they will feel this truth deeply in their bones. And for those who remain until the end of this message, there is a divine promise. You will receive supernatural clarity, spiritual confirmation, and profound insight into why heaven is uniquely smiling upon you in this exact moment and season of your life. Even when others fail to recognize or understand the weight and significance of what you carry within you, do not treat this message as something to be heard once and then forgotten. This message is not ordinary. It is living, dynamic, and deeply prophetic. It is layered with divine revelation, and it is meant to be revisited, meditated upon, and absorbed repeatedly as often as your spirit feels led to return to it. Each time you engage with this message, heaven will unveil something new, another piece of the divine puzzle, another glimpse into your sacred purpose, another key that will unlock your next level of spiritual elevation and destiny. So now, let us go deeper together. Open your heart and allow the Spirit to minister to you, Chosen One. For in this very moment, you are about to discover why heaven is so deeply pleased with you, and why your name is being whispered in divine places beyond your sight. Chapter 1. You remain pure, steadfast, and true, even when you had every excuse and opportunity not to. Chosen One, in a generation where compromise has become the norm and where shortcuts are not only accepted but celebrated, you made a different choice. You chose the narrow road, the path of integrity, discipline, and obedience to what is right, even when it cost you. There were moments, not just once but on many occasions, when the easier path presented itself, when you could have taken the shortcut, blended in with the crowd, or adjusted your truth just enough to fit into environments that appeared attractive, promising, or advantageous. Yet something within your spirit, something sacred, grounded, and immovable, resisted. You couldn't betray what was holy inside you. But something deep within your spirit resisted. There was an inner knowing, a sacred conviction, that reminded you of who you truly are, even when it would have been far more convenient, comfortable, or socially acceptable to forget. You didn't merely say no to sin, you made a conscious and courageous decision to say yes to your soul. You chose to guard your purity, not only in the physical sense, but also in your thoughts, your emotions, and your spiritual posture. You remained vigilant over your mind, your heart, and your inner truth. You refused to lie to yourself to gain approval, and you refused to betray your God-given values just to feel accepted in places your spirit never belonged. And while others may have mocked you, labeling you as too deep, too sensitive, or too serious, you did not waver. You kept your focus on God. You remained anchored in purpose, unmoved by the noise, and committed to the higher calling placed upon your life. You chose character over clout, integrity over influence, and purity over popularity. You made the conscious decision to be in right standing with God rather than to be liked, applauded, or accepted by man. Like that come with a cost. Heaven saw every sacrifice you made. Heaven witnessed the private battles, the silent tears, the lonely nights where obedience felt isolating, and the many invitations you declined, not out of pride, but out of conviction. Heaven recorded the relationships you willingly walked away from, the positions and promotions you lost, and the seemingly golden opportunities you let pass. Not because you lacked the ability, but because you refused to compromise your calling. Every cost was accounted for. Heaven kept the receipts. You didn't just remain outwardly clean, you remained inwardly consecrated. You set yourself apart, not for applause, but for alignment with divine purpose. And while the external world may have appeared quiet, in the spirit realm, your decision echoed with power. The heavens reverberated with the sound of your obedience, and angels took note. Heaven took careful record of your resistance. And now, the reward that is being released into your life is not merely because of the things you accomplished, but profoundly because of the things you refused to do. You did not chase platforms or seek visibility for the sake of recognition. You chased the presence of God. While others resorted to manipulation, compromise, and self-promotion in their attempts to climb ladders of influence and success, you chose instead to remain grounded, allowing God to build your foundation in His timing and by His hand. It was in the secret place, far from the applause of crowds, far from the validation of people, where your character was refined and your faith was proven. In that hidden place, heaven observed your heart and smiled upon you, declaring this one can be trusted. And this is why you are now standing on the threshold of divine elevation. Not because you forced it, but because you were faithful when no one was watching. It was not because you were flashy, nor because you had the most impressive branding or outward presentation, but because you remained faithful. Your elevation is not the result of self-promotion, but of steadfast obedience. You chose to walk in righteousness, even when rebellion was more widely accepted and celebrated. You chose obedience, even when more enticing opportunities tempted you to stray from your convictions. And now in this sacred moment, you no longer need to strive, plead, or position yourself to be blessed, because heaven has already inscribed your name upon the scroll of divine reward. Your faithfulness in the unseen places has not gone unnoticed. The record of your obedience has been sealed in the heavenly realm, and the reward is already in motion. What you did not compromise to obtain, you will not have to strive to maintain. That which you faithfully protected in private, through prayer, discipline, and unwavering conviction, is now about to be honored by God in a very public and undeniable way. And perhaps the most beautiful part of it all is this: you did not pursue righteousness for the sake of reward or recognition. You didn't do it to be seen or celebrated. You did it out of love. You did it because your heart genuinely longs for intimacy with God. You did it because your soul would not allow you to settle for anything less than what heaven has divinely ordained for your life. You did it because your spirit knew that favor without foundation is fleeting, but obedience leads to eternal reward. In a culture that glorifies compromise and celebrates corruption, you chose to remain clean, holy, and set apart. And for that, heaven is not only pleased with what you have done, but deeply pleased with who you have become. Chapter 2, you chose to love even when it would have been far easier and far more justifiable to hate. Chosen one, let's be honest. You didn't merely experience betrayal in passing. You endured it deeply. You lived through it, carried it, and bore its weight with grace. You extended genuine love to people who eventually turned their backs on you. You offered your loyalty, your time, and your trust to those who, in the end, only sought to use or exploit you. You walked into relationships with a full heart, open, sincere, and vulnerable, only to walk away with that same heart broken, bruised, and shattered. And truthfully, had you chosen to shut down emotionally, to harden your heart, to build impenetrable walls around your soul, or to stop trusting others altogether, no one would have blamed you. The world would have called it wisdom or growth, a justified form of self-protection. But heaven sees differently. Heaven did not merely observe your pain, it recognized your response. And what you did, heaven calls holy. Because instead of becoming bitter, you chose to remain pure. Instead of closing yourself off, you chose to keep your heart open. You loved when it was hardest. And that, chosen one, is sacred. You chose to love, not because it was easy, convenient, or painless, but because it was divine. You recognized that love was not merely an emotion, but a reflection of God's nature working through you. When you had every reason and every right to respond with hatred, you chose instead to pray. When you could have retaliated with harsh words or bitterness, you remained silent, submitting your pain to the wisdom of heaven. And when others hurled stones of judgment, criticism, or betrayal in your direction, you did not return evil for evil. Instead, you responded with grace. Grace that defied logic, grace that mirrored the heart of God. Your restraint was not weakness, it was sacred strength. Your love was not ordinary, it was holy. And let it be clear, your response did not stem from weakness, but from wisdom. It came from a place of deep spiritual maturity, from a heart that declared, even if others fail to honor me, I will still honor God. You did not merely endure betrayal, you transcended it. You did not allow bitterness to take root within you. Instead, you carried the lessons it taught with grace and humility. You chose not to retaliate, even when retaliation would have been justified. Instead, you chose to release. You embraced forgiveness, not because those who wronged you were deserving of it, but because your soul required it in order to remain free. You chose the path of healing. You chose the path of even while the wounds were still fresh and bleeding. That kind of love is exceedingly rare. It is not born of human strength, but flows directly from heaven. And it is that very love, that sacred, selfless, and resilient love, that distinguishes the chosen from the crowd. It is the mark of one who walks not by emotion, but by divine alignment. You did not allow pain to poison your purpose. You did not let the wounds you suffered turn you bitter, cynical, or toxic. Instead, you allowed the pain to purify you. You surrendered to the refining process, permitting it to strip away the layers of ego, the pride that demanded to be right, and the urge to prove your point or seek revenge. You allowed the fire of adversity to do its work, not to destroy you, but to refine you. And rather than letting it make you cold or calloused, you let it make you holy. It humbled you, it softened you, it matured you, it made you whole in ways that comfort never could, and heaven took note of it all. The hidden reason why God is so deeply pleased with you is not solely because you endured the trials. It is because you endured them with your heart intact. You remained soft in a world that tried to harden you. You stayed pure in a culture that tried to corrupt you. And that kind of integrity, that kind of endurance, is sacred in heaven's eyes. You did not allow the fire of affliction to burn away your kindness. Instead, you allowed it to consume and remove everything within you that no longer served your calling. Every ounce of pride, fear, and self-protection that stood in the way of your divine purpose. And because you yielded to that refining process, God can now trust you on a higher level. He can entrust you with more influence, more responsibility, and more revelation, because you've been proven in the fire. You didn't merely go around preaching about love, you became the very embodiment of it. You didn't just speak of forgiveness as an ideal, you lived it out as a daily sacrifice. You chose to forgive, not just when it was easy, but when it cost you dearly, when it required the surrender of relationships, when it left you feeling misunderstood, and even when it made you appear foolish in the eyes of others. People may have accused you of being too soft, too spiritual, too kind for this world. But still, you chose love, not out of weakness, but because love is who you are at your core. It is the essence of your identity, the fruit of your intimacy with God, and the unshakable proof that you are indeed chosen. You understand a sacred truth, that vengeance belongs to God alone. You recognize that love holds greater power than hate, and you have chosen to live accordingly. Your life bears the marks of someone who has spent time in the presence of the Almighty, because only one who has drawn near to God can love the way you have loved. Your love is not driven by fleeting emotions or shallow sentiment. It flows from a place of revelation, a deep spiritual understanding that transcends human reasoning. You know that loving your enemies does not signify weakness. It is in fact the highest evidence of spiritual maturity. It is a clear and radiant sign that you are awake to the reality of God's kingdom and surrendered to His ways. And that, chosen one, is why heaven is honoring you in this season. Your love has not gone unnoticed. What others may have misunderstood or mistaken as naivety, God sees as divine strength. Your love is not a liability, it is your greatest legacy. It is the enduring fruit of a life aligned with heaven, and it is the very reason why favor is now being poured out upon you. You may never fully know how many lives were transformed simply because you chose not to retaliate. You'll never fully grasp how many souls glimpsed Christ through your calm, measured response in moments when chaos surrounded you. You cannot count how many battles were won in the spirit realm precisely because you refused to fight in the flesh. You loved when it would have been easier, and perhaps even expected, to hate. You loved quietly when no one was watching. You loved when your name was being maligned, when your character was under attack, and when your heart was quietly breaking. Yet you continued to love, not from a place of performance, but from a place of sacred conviction. That kind of love, the holy, unshakable, spirit-filled love that refuses to bend to bitterness, is what is now qualifying you for the next level of your divine assignment. Heaven has seen every moment of restraint, every act of mercy, and every tear you've shed in silence. Heaven honors that kind of love. Heaven is responding to it. Because in a world that glorifies revenge, you chose redemption. In a culture that promotes retaliation, you chose reconciliation. And that, chosen one, is why your next season will be marked by supernatural favor. Not earned by force, but released through faithfulness. Heaven is moving on your behalf because love like yours is rare, and it is powerful enough to shift destinies. Chapter 3. You passed the tests you never knew you were taking. Chosen one, the most difficult tests in life are not the ones you study for or anticipate. They are the ones that appear without warning, the ones that catch you off guard and reveal the true condition of your heart. Your life has been filled with such unseen examinations. Many of your greatest trials arrive not with preparation or instruction, but with unexpected betrayal, deep disappointment, prolonged silence, and circumstances that challenge the very posture of your soul. And yet, through it all, you passed, without even realizing the divine weight of what you were walking through. You were being examined, though you didn't even realize it. Examined not by people, but by heaven itself. Quietly, carefully, and completely. There were countless moments when you had every right to respond in anger, but you chose restraint instead. Times when you were deeply wounded yet still offered kindness. Days when you felt broken, unseen, and utterly exhausted, yet continued to pour into the lives of others. There were occasions when giving up would have been justified, even expected, but you didn't. You pressed forward. And the truth is, no one stood and applauded your perseverance. There were no trophies handed to you, no titles conferred, no spotlight shining in your direction, yet heaven saw it all. In fact, the tests you endured were so deeply personal and private that most people had no idea how close you were to breaking beneath the pressure. But God did. He saw the immense spiritual weight you were carrying, even as you smiled through the pain. He witnessed the temptations you resisted in secret, the ones you could have easily given into without anyone ever knowing. He noticed the conversations you intentionally avoided, the retaliation you refused to take part in, and the bitterness you deliberately chose not to nurture in your heart. While people were focused on outward performance, appearances, and results, heaven was attentively watching the purity of your motives, the integrity of your soul, and the quiet victories no one else could see. These were divine evaluations, not of your outer appearance or visible accomplishments, but of your inner condition, your patience, your loyalty, your humility, and your trust in God. Even in seasons of deep confusion, when nothing made sense and you couldn't understand why things were unfolding the way they were, you remained surrendered. You continued to show up with clean hands, a soft heart, and a spirit that refused to grow hard or bitter. You passed the test not because you felt strong every day, but because you chose to be faithful every day, regardless of how you felt or what you faced. That is what truly pleased heaven, not a display of false strength, but your willingness to lean entirely on God's. You didn't pretend to have everything figured out. Instead, you kept your posture low, your spirit open, and your heart aligned with truth. Those quiet, secret decisions to remain honest, holy, and humble did not go unnoticed by the one who sees all. You weren't motivated by a desire for recognition, nor were you doing good to gain validation from others. You acted with integrity because your spirit refused to betray the divine calling on your life. You chose to remain in alignment with God when it would have been easier to walk away. You stayed in position when it would have been more gratifying to defend yourself or prove a point. You stood firm under pressure, never flinching in the face of adversity. And even when you felt weak, worn, and overwhelmed, you did not fold. You remained faithful. And now the reward that is coming your way will not merely be significant, it will be divine in nature. It will be perfectly proportionate to the weight you carried in silence, the discipline you maintained in secret, and the unwavering integrity you clung to when no one else was watching. Because here is the deeper truth. Heaven does not promote based on popularity, public applause, or external success. It promotes based on private victories, those unseen battles won in quiet surrender and unwavering faith. And that is exactly what you have been building, quietly, consistently, and faithfully. You pass the kind of tests that heaven values above all else. Tests of attitude when no one was watching, tests of obedience when there was no affirmation from others, and tests of trust when every aspect of your life felt uncertain and unstable. These experiences were not merely trials to endure, they were thresholds you crossed, often without even realizing it, moving you into a new season of purpose and destiny. Now, public favor is about to find you, but it will not come by chance, luck, or coincidence. Rather, it will be the inevitable harvest of the seeds you sowed faithfully in the darkness, nurtured with patience and unwavering faith. The blessings you are about to receive are directly connected to the battles you quietly endured without telling anyone. And they are the reward for the hidden yeses you faithfully gave to God when every part of your flesh screamed, no. Chapter 4. You listened when God whispered. Someone make, in the sign of mission. You are the chosen one. Obedience, when everything is clear and understandable, is one thing. But obedience in times of confusion, uncertainty, and silence is an entirely different and deeper realm of faith. And that is precisely the path you have been walking. God did not always provide you with the full map or a detailed explanation. He did not always tell you why certain doors were closed, why certain promises were delayed, or why he asked you to let go of things that once felt good, comforting, or right. Yet, despite the lack of clarity, you chose to listen when God whispered, and that matters more than you know. Yet, you listened anyway. You did not wait for a dramatic sign, a loud confirmation, or the thunder of certainty. Instead, you responded to the quiet, gentle whisper of God. When he nudged your heart, you moved in obedience. When he pulled your spirit away from certain people, situations, or environments, you followed. Even when it was painful, confusing, or emotionally difficult. You did not resist his instructions simply because it did not align with your human logic or understanding. Instead, you chose faith over reason, trust over comfort, and surrender over control. You leaned in, not loudly or with pride, but quietly, humbly, and faithfully. You followed the still, small voice of God, the gentle prompting that many others overlooked or ignored. That level of obedience is rare. That depth of listening and that kind of sensitivity to the divine frequency is not something that can be taught in classrooms or acquired through intellect. It is a sacred gift, one bestowed by grace, and you honored that gift with reverence. While others were consumed by the noise of the world, distracted by chaos and clutter, you deliberately tuned your ears to the realm of the Spirit. You intentionally silenced your surroundings, externally and internally, just to discern what God was whispering into your soul. While the world busied itself with chasing trends, hype, and the ever-shifting opinions of people, you chose a different path. You kept your heart steady and positioned to receive divine direction. That posture of humility, that quiet, resolute decision to respond to God's leading without the need for public recognition or fanfare, is precisely why heaven delights in you. There were times when the whisper from God did not come with detailed instructions or a clear roadmap. Sometimes it was just a single word, a subtle feeling, or a deep inner conviction. Yet, even the word, you did not hesitate. And it is that kind of immediate, trust-filled obedience that heaven celebrates. You released friendships that, though familiar and comforting, no longer aligned with the path God had set before you. You left behind environments that once felt safe and secure, stepping away from the comfort of the known. You turned your back on things that appeared to be blessings on the surface, yet your spirit discerned a deeper truth that told you otherwise. You took courageous leaps of faith, even when no one around you offered encouragement or applause. You remained still and patient in moments when the world around you was loudly insisting that you move forward. You obeyed, not because you could see the full picture or understand the reasons, but simply because you believed you should. Obedience of this nature requires profound faith, a trust that goes beyond sight and reason. True faith is real faith precisely because it often demands the sacrifice of everything you once believed you needed. It may cause you to appear foolish in the eyes of others, leading to misunderstanding and doubt. People questioned your decisions, and some even chose to walk away. Yet you did not adjust your listening to conform to their expectations or opinions. Instead, you deliberately kept your ear attuned to the voice of heaven. And now, the very hidden reason you are about to enter into a season of supernatural favor is this. You allowed God to lead you, even when His guidance did not make logical sense, and you permitted Him to order your steps even when the ground beneath you felt unstable and uncertain. You placed your trust in the gentle whisper of God, rather than being swayed by the overwhelming noise and clamor of the world around you. Heaven rewards that kind of trust, not the shallow, convenient obedience that is given only when circumstances are easy, but the profound, radical, and surrendered listening that comes from the depths of the heart. This is the kind of obedience that declares, God, even if it costs me everything I hold dear, I still choose you. While others sought confirmation and validation from the approval of crowds, you moved forward boldly on the basis of conviction. While others hesitated and questioned, you advanced with courage. You walked in obedience even when clarity was absent, and you believed in God's promises even when tangible proof was lacking. Chapter 5. You kept building when it looked pointless. Chosen one, let us be honest with ourselves. Understanding the circumstances, it would have made perfect sense to stop. You had every conceivable reason to walk away. The support you longed for was absent. The results of your labor remained invisible to the naked eye. The numbers, the measurable indicators of success, did not reflect the magnitude of your effort. You were neither being celebrated by others nor gaining widespread recognition or viral attention. In either later, and hand in stop or breezes, and not most let me so. Instead, you persevered, building something in silence, steadily, persistently, without fanfare or applause. For a long time, it felt as though you were laboring in vain, as if all your efforts were for nothing. Yet, despite the exhaustion and the feelings of invisibility, you persisted. You continued to show up faithfully, even when your body and spirit longed for rest. You kept creating with diligence and passion, even when it seemed as though no one noticed your efforts. You continued to serve with a willing heart, even when it felt empty and depleted. You gave generously and selflessly, even when you were barely receiving in return. That kind of unwavering faith and spiritual endurance is never overlooked by heaven. Each time you chose consistency over comfort, steadfastness over ease, God was watching attentively and was deeply pleased. Every time you planted seeds in seemingly dry and barren ground, heaven was diligently recording your faithfulness and perseverance. You were motivated by obedience rather than by any visible outcome or immediate reward. You worked with steadfast conviction, not seeking applause or recognition from others. And even though it often felt as if you were making no progress, as if your efforts were leading nowhere, in reality, you were being carefully and intentionally positioned for a purpose far greater than you could yet comprehend or perceive. You were not merely working, rather you were worshiping through every act of your labor. You were not simply creating, you were prophesying and declaring God's promises through your unwavering consistency. You were not just writing, building, or speaking. You were laying down spiritual bricks, each one a vital foundation for a vision that God had entrusted to you, a vision that no one else could fully comprehend or appreciate. While others gave up when they failed to see immediate results, you persevered and continued to build. While others sought validation and approval from people, you moved forward by revelation and divine insight. While others chased platforms and worldly recognition, you remained steadfast and faithful to the process God had ordained for you. But through it all, you remained faithful to the process, steadfast and unwavering. And because of that enduring faithfulness, your reward is not merely anticipated in the future, it is already being released even now. You see, chosen one, you were never simply building a project or accomplishing a task. You were building a foundation of obedience and trustworthiness. Through your consistent faithfulness, you have been proving to heaven that you can be entrusted with the vision God has given you, even while you remain in a place of obscurity and unseen labor. You refuse to allow numbers or statistics to define your value. You would not permit visible results to dictate your identity or sense of worth. Nor would you let discouragement steal away your discipline and determination. That is precisely why your season is now shifting. Heaven is pleased not because you were flawless or without fault, but because you were persistent and unwavering in your commitment. You did not abandon the assignment God gave you, nor did you discard the divine blueprint entrusted to your care. Instead, you continued faithfully, writing, preaching, designing, praying, and laboring diligently over the vision and the work that God placed deeply within your heart. Even when everyone else stopped paying attention or ceased to look, the work you were doing in private was far from pointless. It was prophetic in nature, carrying divine significance beyond what was immediately visible. What you were building quietly and faithfully in the dark was not a sign of failure, but rather a strong and lasting foundation being laid for the future. And now, the very thing to which you remain faithful during times when no one else cared or celebrated is precisely the thing God is about to breathe new life into publicly. Your harvest is not delayed. Rather, it has been growing unseen beneath the surface, and soon it will break through in powerful and unexpected ways that will surpass even your greatest expectations. Chapter 6. You let God heal you before you tried to lead others. Chosen one, in a world where many are eager to teach, lead, and influence others quickly, you made a different sacred choice. You intentionally chose to sit quietly with God, allowing Him to heal and prepare your heart before you attempted to stand before others. You allowed yourself to weep and process your own pain before you tried to speak words of wisdom or encouragement. You chose to be humbled, healed, and made whole by God's grace before you endeavored to hold up and support others in their struggles. You intentionally chose to weep and process your emotions fully before attempting to speak words to others. You made the deliberate decision to be humbled, healed, and restored to wholeness before endeavoring to hold up and support those around you. And it is precisely this posture and approach that has brought delight and favor from heaven. You were not pursuing position, status, or recognition. Rather, you were pursuing purity of heart and integrity of spirit. You did not rush to become a voice in the crowd. Instead, you patiently waited to become a vessel fit for God's use. Rather than offering broken wisdom filtered through a wounded and incomplete perspective, you chose to surrender yourself fully to the process of deep and transformative healing. You courageously allowed God to enter the locked and hidden places of your soul, granting him access to the pain you had never spoken aloud, the deep-seated trauma you were unaware was still influencing your thoughts and actions, and the unconscious patterns that had quietly been shaping your identity over time. While this kind of inner work may not appear glamorous or impressive to the world, it is truly glorious and highly esteemed in the eyes of heaven. You permitted God to detoxify your motives, cleansing and purifying your heart completely before you ever picked up a microphone, took on a leadership role, or stepped into the purpose he had ordained for your life. You allowed yourself to be vulnerable and to bleed in the sacred presence of God, rather than spilling your pain onto his people. You understood deeply that attempting to help and minister to others without first undergoing personal healing can inadvertently cause harm, even when it is dressed up in the guise of ministry. You refused to lead from a place of ego or self-promotion. Instead, you sought to lead from a genuine encounter with God. While many pursued platforms and recognition, you diligently pursued God's presence. While others chased viral moments and fleeting popularity, you chose to go vertical, delving deeper and deeper into your relationship with God. You permitted him to strip away false identities, pride, the mentality of performance, and the desire to impress others. You earnestly and humbly asked God to make you real, to restore your wholeness, and to make you right before him, first and foremost. Heaven is pleased with you precisely because you did not attempt to bypass the necessary process of breaking and healing. You did not try to preach around or mask your pain, nor did you pretend to have it all together when you did not. Instead, you brought your brokenness honestly and vulnerably to the altar of God, allowing him to correct you, to cut away what was not needed, to refine your character, and then to cover you with his grace so that all that flows out of you would be pure and pleasing in his sight. And now, as a direct result of that private and often unseen obedience, a powerful and public anointing is being released upon your life. Because you allowed God to heal you first, the words you now speak carry profound weight and authority. Because you permitted him to refine and purify your heart, your influence will be marked by integrity and authenticity. Because you permitted him to refine and purify your heart, your influence will be marked by integrity and authenticity. Because you remained faithfully on the potter's wheel through the process of shaping and molding, heaven is now able to entrust you with the responsibility of leading others. You no longer lead from a place of wounds or brokenness. Rather, you lead from a place of wisdom and maturity. You are no longer trying to fix others as a way to avoid addressing your own healing and growth. Instead, you chose to let God work on you first, allowing his transformative power to prepare you. And it is precisely this kind of leadership and this solid foundation that has the power to shake atmospheres and unlock powerful revival. Chosen one, heaven is immensely proud of you, not because you have been perfect or without flaw, but because you have been honest and authentic throughout your journey. You did not fake your faith, nor did you mask your struggles or skip important steps in an attempt to arrive at your destination more quickly. Instead, you allowed God to faithfully lead you through the valleys of life, permitting him to touch and heal the deepest parts of your soul that religion often neglects or avoids. And because of your willingness to walk through that process, you now carry something far deeper and more powerful than mere information. You carry genuine transformation. You are not simply a voice among many. You are a vessel prepared and filled by God. You are not only influential in your sphere, you are anointed and empowered by the Spirit, and in this next season of your life, the focus is no longer solely on your own healing and restoration. Rather, it is now about being an instrument through which God can bring healing to others. Because you did not merely experience restoration for yourself, you have been recommissioned by God for a greater purpose. You were healed so that you could help those in need. You were broken so that you could become a source of blessing. You were crushed so that you might carry a deep and abiding compassion for others. And you were emptied so that heaven could fill you anew with his glory and power. Now, because you allowed God to heal you without resistance or hesitation, He is able to use you without limitation or hindrance in His divine work. Chapter 7. You became who God created, not who the world expected. Chosen one. One of the most sacred and significant decisions you have ever made in your life was to embrace and become the person God originally created you to be, rather than conforming to the expectations and molds that the world tried to impose upon you. You made the deliberate choice to stop shrinking yourself and your unique identity in order to fit into the limited boxes others try to confine you within. You ceased editing and compromising your personal truth merely to maintain superficial peace or avoid conflict. Moreover, you refused to silence or suppress the unique gifts and talents God placed within you, simply to prevent misunderstanding or rejection from those around you. You came to the profound realization that the pressure to perform and conform was never imposed by God, but rather originated from the world, with its labels, expectations, and projections that others placed upon you. For far too long, you carried the weight of these external demands and judgments. But somewhere along your journey, through seasons of pain and fervent prayer, through moments of isolation and divine revelation, you were able to break free from those burdens. And it is precisely for this reason that heaven is deeply pleased with you, because you ceased chasing after what was merely safe and comfortable, and instead began to surrender wholeheartedly to what was sacred and divinely ordained. You decisively stopped seeking the approval or permission of others to be your authentic self, and instead began to walk boldly and confidently in the identity that God whispered into your spirit before the foundation of the world was laid. You released the need to be palatable or easily accepted by others, letting go of the fear of being perceived as too much or too different. You abandoned the diluted, watered-down version of your voice that you once used in an attempt to make others comfortable, and instead embraced your true expression. You courageously broke free from generational patterns and stepped beyond cultural limitations, refusing to become a mere copy of what everyone else applauded or celebrated. Rather, you chose to become a true reflection of the identity and purpose that heaven had already approved and ordained for you. Chosen one, what you have achieved is exceedingly rare, for most people never reach this sacred place of authenticity and freedom. Many remain hidden behind masks, shackled to false identities, bound by the opinions of others, living to seek applause and approval, while silently dying inside. But you are different. You were willing to endure misunderstanding, isolation, and rejection, simply to live authentically. You did not merely discover your purpose, you surrendered yourself fully to it. You did not simply speak about alignment with God's will, you actively walked into and lived out that alignment. Rather than repeating the words and beliefs of others, you courageously tapped into your own unique divine frequency, and as a result, everything in heaven is now aligning perfectly in your favor. When you ceased chasing after fleeting platforms and stopped relying on the approval of others, heaven bestowed upon you immense power and favor. As you relinquished the need to be liked, God ignited within you an unquenchable fire, transforming you into a radiant light amid a world shrouded in illusion. A distinct voice in the midst of overwhelming noise, and an embodiment of truth in a society consumed by superficial performance. So much so that now, the very atmosphere acknowledges your presence, angels respond to your every movement, and doors swing open at the sound of your unwavering obedience. Because you are no longer wearing a costume, but instead embracing your true calling, Nash, this is precisely why you are about to rise. Not as a result of manipulation or strategic branding, nor because you compromised or altered your identity to gain acceptance, but rather because you have become exactly who God always intended you to be, unapologetically, without dilution or delay. Embodying the very version of yourself that hell feared and heaven always knew was destined to emerge. So yes, favor is falling, breakthrough is arriving, and elevation is unfolding. Because when you become the true version of yourself, the one God formed in secret, you activate a level of grace, access, and protection so profound that the world cannot explain or hinder it. And in doing so, you have become everything they said you would never be, and precisely who God always knew you were destined to become. Thanks for watching. Here ends this video. Take a moment to like, share, and subscribe. If you find this video interesting, thank